Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to Quadriga, where the focus this week is on Russia, which has been banned from the upcoming Winter Olympics in South Korea over allegations of systematic state-sponsored doping. The decision was announced on Tuesday by the head of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach. And in light of that announcement, many are once again asking whether next summer's Soccer World Cup, which is, of course, set to be hosted by Russia, is in the right hands. After all, one person above all looks to benefit from the tournament, and that is Vladimir Putin. So our question here on Quadriga this week is Putin's games. Is Russia playing fair with sport? And to discuss that question, I'm joined here in the studio by Erik Kirschbaum, who writes for the Los Angeles Times and who has a long track record in covering sports and especially soccer. And he says banning the Russian team from the Winter Olympics is a bold but brilliant move. Also with us is Vladimir Esipov from Deutsche Welle's Russian department. He believes it doesn't matter what you think of the Russian government. The 2018 World Cup is going to be a huge celebration of soccer for everybody. Vladimir is nodding, and that has to be good, he says. And a warm welcome too to Daria Sukharchuk, a freelance journalist working for Russian and English language publications. Daria argues that the doping scandal is painful to witness, but not really surprising to anyone familiar with the mindset of Russian officials. Welcome once again to all three of you. I'd like to begin with you, Erik. It was described as one of the weightiest decisions ever faced by the Olympic movement. It has now been decided. Russia has been banned from competing in the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea. You say it is a bold but brilliant move. Why bold? Why brilliant?
Well, I think the IOC needed to take a firm step this time. They've been pussyfooting around for a long time with doping, and the evidence was just overwhelming in this case. Criminal energy that went to Sochi to using spies to exchange the urine samples is amazing. When you read this, you just can't believe this really happened. And they had to do it to save any credibility. The Winter Olympics have been sliding downhill for a long time in the ratings. People care less and less about it. I used to love sports. I used to go to I covered the Olympics in Athens and in Beijing. Now I don't even watch it. I think it's all just ruined by doping. So this is a really heartening development for me to see the IOC taking a firm step. I think Thomas Bach did the right thing by cracking down hard, but leaving a bridge open for the Russians to take part if they can prove that they're clean.
Heartening, you might say bold and brilliant. Is it the zero tolerance that the International Olympic Committee had promised? Because there will be Russian athletes, after all, competing at the Games.
There'll hopefully be Russian hockey players, figure skaters, sports where doping is not really an issue. Hopefully the world will see some of these great Russian hockey players on the ice. I'm looking forward to seeing Russian hockey players again.
Before I come to the two Russians we have in the panel today, I'd just like to stick with you for just a second, Erik, because, I mean, let me give you a flavour of what's being said from the Russian side. A Russian foreign ministry spokeswoman came out and said they're always trying to put us down in everything, our way of life, our culture, our history, and now our sport. What do you say to such sentiments?
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's this whole encirclement mentality. We see it with NATO. They're afraid that NATO's encircling them as well. I think most people in the West realize that's just ridiculous, and hopefully nobody will take it too serious. That's Russia's problem if they feel that the West is encircling them. That's Russia's problem. They think that the IOC is going after them for doping when they've been caught red-handed. I think most people outside Russia see it differently.
Vladimir has been looking very thoughtful. Daria has been looking very thoughtful. Daria, you say your personal reaction to this. You talk about the doping scandal of the whole saga being painful. Tell us about the pain.
Well, to be honest, I guess just like most people in Russia, I did not expect the Russian team to win the Sochi Olympics. So when Russia won, it was a great surprise. I was actually really happy to witness it. I cheered just like everybody else. It was a great surprise. But then afterwards, when this whole doping scandal started, I realized that it was fake. The feeling could be compared to someone giving you a Christmas present, making you very happy with it, and then you realize that the gifter is actually a habitual shoplifter and he probably stole a present from someone else.
Yeah.
I was not surprised by Russia winning the Sochi Olympics because it fits perfectly to the Russian political goals. I think the Russians, on some political level, wanted to be first in the Sochi Olympics at any cost. And it was no question of cost at that time, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So Russia got this prize in the Sochi Olympics with huge cost of doping. And this is the problem of Russia. We have a huge ambitions on the international level, and we have a reality which not always fit to these ambitions. So to close this gap, we use doping, which is a shame things to do. So this ban from the Olympics in Sochi in Korea is a complete disaster for Russia. It's no question.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the goal, but I remember reading all the forecasts right before the Olympics. Nobody expected Russia to take even the third place where it is now. Yeah.
So it was a nice surprise for Russian people and a nice surprise for Russian government. But as I said, I'm not surprised by this, but fulfilling these goals by any means.
Before we continue the conversation, let's just take a closer look at what the allegations of state-backed doping amount to.
The 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. Russia, the host nation, won 33 medals, more than any other country. Russia and President Vladimir Putin came off looking like champions. But did they play fair, or were the real champions the doping labs? 2 years after the Games, head investigator for the World Anti-Doping Agency, Richard McLaren, published some serious allegations.
The Moscow laboratory operated for the protection of doped Russian athletes within a state-directed, fail-safe system. The Russian Ministry of Sport directed, controlled, and oversaw the manipulation of athletes' analytical results.
No less than the head of Russia's own anti-doping lab, Grigory Rodchenkov, was chief witness. He left for the United States, as did Yulia Stepanova, a runner who had reported systematic doping in Russian sports and started the ball rolling. Are the accusations of state-sponsored doping just mudslinging against Russia?
Vladimir, what do you say to that question? Are these allegations just mudslinging on the part of the West, a conspiracy on the part of the West against Putin's efforts to make Russia once again a strong nation?
It fits to the kind of paranoia we have in the country since a couple of years. I'm not sharing this, so this is not my opinion, but it's an opinion who is sharing a lot of people in Russia, that the Western world, US, EU, Germany in particular, trying to destroy Russia on some level. And it's a bad thing because there is no way out. So we're just escalating with every sanction against Russia. We're just escalating this conflict between Russia and the Western world. So I'm not sharing this opinion.
Is this the mindset that you were, the Russian mindset that you were referring to at the beginning of the show in your quote at the beginning there?
Well, I meant actually something else, something Vladimir also mentioned, that it is pretty common for Russian officials to cheat on things. I mean, Russia is a remarkably corrupt country. If those people can, without blinking an eye, steal so much money from the state budget, why cannot they fake doping samples?
This is a good point, yeah.
If they do not value any kind of fair play, they just want a victory at any price.
Because in Russia you have no such rules like in Western world. So Russia is a quite young country in terms of state structures, because we had complete collapse on the state 91. Yeah. So everything is new, and this rules fixation in Russia is not that strong that in Germany or in the Western in general. So the rule is a question how to interpret, how do you interpretation the rule, so you can steal, you can cheat, you can not get punished for this. And it's a mindset in the country. It's not the government mindset. It is at any level in the country, in Russia, in the population. It's like acceptable.
Erik, your thoughts?
I mean, hopefully, that's why I think this is such a good move by the IOC, is hopefully they'll learn the lesson this time. I think we talked about East Germany, and Germany, they had their whole doping history as well, and I think Germany learned from that. I don't think anybody thinks that there's any serious doping going on in Germany, so hopefully these sanctions will have an educational effect on not only Russia, but other countries that are thinking about doping. And that's why I think it's such a smart move by the IOC. Tough sanctions, but leaving the door open for individual Russian athletes to take part.
And Vladimir, what did you make of the announcement yesterday, President Putin's announcement that he is going to be standing again for the presidency? What did you make of the timing of that announcement?
I'm not surprised that there will be any timing. It is just accident that it was yesterday. It could be tomorrow. It could be the day before. I mean, it doesn't play any role. So not really. You see differently? I mean...
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a new thing. Everybody knew he was running. I mean, come on.
OK, let's listen. Talking of President Putin and what he has been saying, he also came out yesterday. He didn't just talk about the candidacy. He gave his immediate reaction to the doping ban. Let's listen to hear what Vladimir Putin had to say.
All of this looks like an absolutely manipulated and politically motivated decision. We see this. I have no doubts about it.
Vladimir, is this, I mean, the language there that you get from the Russian president, the sense is that the East and West are still locked in a sporting Cold War. Is that the case?
I mean, Russia sees itself. I'm a Russian citizen, but I'm not see myself as a part of this paranoia. But Russian government and a big part of Russian society see themselves in a kind of Cold War with the West, obviously. So what's happening with the Olympic Games, it fits perfectly to this picture of the world. We are trying to be destroyed on some level by the Western country. So I'm not surprised by this statement at all.
Erik, a Cold War, sporting Cold War between the East and the West. You smile, but...
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. But, I mean, I think this fits into Putin's strategy, and it makes Putin more popular at home, probably, but makes him less popular around the world. I think he just hurts his credibility outside Russia more and more with this strategy.
I think Putin doesn't really care about his popularity in the world. I mean, it's out of question for him.
One question that comes to mind is, does Putin care for the athletes? I mean, the athletes in some ways are viewed as perpetrators, part of the Russian doping system, but at the same time, they're also victims of the system. You mentioned, you know, East German, systematic doping in East Germany. That had a huge impact on the health, the long-term health of many of the people who were, you know, involved in those doping practices. How concerned is Putin about that? How concerned are Russian people about that?
Russian people are very concerned about this because Russia without Winter Olympics, it's a disaster for Russia because we are all, I'm not saying we are obsessed with Winter Olympics, but it's playing extremely huge role in the Russian public opinion. So as a child, you're growing up in Russia watching every 4 years the Winter Olympics. You get used to it. So not seeing Russian flag, not hearing Russian anthem, and the Olympics, it's a disaster.
How are the Russians likely to respond in sporting terms, Daria, to this ban?
I have been observing the reactions in the media for the last couple of days, since the news breaks, so since yesterday. I could say that the reactions are very different. Quite a lot of people are saying that the Russian team should go anyway. I am personally on that side as well, because for the athletes, it is something they have been preparing for their whole lives. It is really, could be a pinnacle of their career. For many of them, they definitely deserve to go. They can prove they're clean. And I do not think why they should miss out on any of it. But quite a lot of people are saying that the athletes going anyway, despite the ban on the Russian team, would be tantamount to national treachery. That is something that as a Russian journalist, you hear a lot, those words, unfortunately. People somehow tend to associate the country, the state, and the name of Vladimir Putin together. And if you do something which is not in the general line, you're supposed to be a traitor. So athletes deciding to go and compete on the Olympics just because of their ambition, despite their country being, so not representing their country, but more representing themselves, to some people by some people would definitely be seen as treachery, and we have already seen reactions like that, quite a lot actually. But thankfully, Putin himself has said that he will not be obstructing athletes to go from. So I'm quite hopeful that a lot of Russian athletes would still
That was
go.
a really encouraging signal this week that Putin didn't call for a boycott. There was some fear that he would, and he didn't. I mean, we had the 80 and the 84 Olympics that were tainted by the political boycotts over Afghanistan, and so it's encouraging. I mean, this is why I'm optimistic that it could be a good Olympics after all, and that Russia will be back with its team in 4 years.
You just have to do the best from this situation, to send the athletes to the Olympics and to try to show the world that we can win without doping. So.
Just give me a word on whether you believe, because we keep talking about Vladimir Putin's controlling role in all this. Does he? Are we sure that he knows and has known about the extent of the systematic doping practiced by the Russian Federation?
I do not think anything. I do not know anything for sure, but I'm can just speculate that Putin knew in details about this doping system, and I'm not sure that he knew everything in the last detail.
He aligned himself very closely to the Sochi Olympics. $50 billion were spent to build a Winter Olympic venue and a summer resort. The IOC loved him for it. Nobody really wants to bid for the Winter Olympics anymore. Putin did, and so Putin and Bach are very close. That's why it's all the more remarkable that Bach had the courage to take these sanctions. So it's hard to imagine Putin had no clue this was going on.
But I'm not sure he was controlling this state doping system in the last detail. I'm not
no,
really sure.
I don't know either. Nobody knows,
but
except for him.
He probably knew it was going on.
We can only speculate. I mean, no one knows for sure.
Do you know?
I wish I did. I wish I did, yeah. OK, we need to move on just a little bit. We need to talk about how the doping saga, the doping scandal, is going to impact on Russia's hosting of the Soccer World Cup next summer, especially given the amount of hope that Russian President Vladimir Putin is investing in the World Cup and the Russian people, indeed. Let's watch a report, first of all, before we talk about that.
Vladimirovich Putin.
The strong man in the Kremlin knows PR. Putin is well known for his love of images like these. The athletic, outdoorsy sportsman. And he has no qualms about showing it. Putin is not known as a football fan, but he brought the 2018 World Cup to Russia, and Russians are overjoyed.
We'll definitely play in the finals. I'm just waiting for the finals, and we're going to win. I've been waiting for this World Championship for 40 years now.
The countdown to the 2018 World Cup in Russia is on. It's the same year as Russia's next presidential elections. It may well provide a handsome return. Are sports in Russia a pawn in Putin's power games?
That's a question we have been addressing, we will continue to address, but I want to go first to Vladimir, who is a very, very big soccer fan and who is looking forward very much to the Soccer World Cup. Tell us more, Vladimir.
I'm really looking forward to this game in St. Petersburg, in my hometown. Every time I arrive in St. Petersburg in the middle of the night, I'm passing on a new highway by a new soccer stadium in St. Petersburg, and it's completely surreal what we got in the city. I'm waiting for my tickets for one game in St. Petersburg, which Argentina will participate, so I got this ticket. And I want to say that Russia is not only Putin, Russia is on a huge amount of people as well. And it's for Russian people, on the average level, for the normal Russians, it's a huge celebration, it's a huge event. And the whole city of St. Petersburg, as well as other cities all across Russia, are looking forward to host this World Cup. No matter how bad the doping was, no matter how bad the corruption was, no matter how many money was stolen during these buildings, it's a huge celebration.
I was talking to a leading German sports journalist after the announcement of the ban on Russia's participation in the Winter Olympics came through. And he said, you know, he's a big reporter on soccer, big fan of soccer, very passionate about soccer. He said, in my working life and in my own life, I have a sort of a rhythm. I go from the European Championship to the World Cup to the European Championship to the World Cup, and that's how my life is panned out.
Very nice.
And he said, yeah, great. Yeah. He said, this time round, I can't generate any enthusiasm for the World Cup in Russia because it's such an unfree country. What do you say to that kind of thing?
Every country which was hosting the World Cup in the last year, Brazil, South Africa, had a set of domestic problems. In Brazil, it was a huge protest against this World Cup, and South Africa was fighting with some domestic problems as well. So Russia is not a perfect country. Germany expecting us to be perfect. Germany expecting everyone to be perfect. Germany, yeah. But we are not perfect. We are by far not perfect country. We are stealing money, we are cheating, I would say, we are doping the Olympics. We are not perfect. So we are not fitting in this perfect expectation of the German public opinion and of German media to deliver a perfect World Cup. Nevertheless, it will be, for me as a Russian citizen, it will be a huge event.
What do you say to all this, Erik? And are you enthusiastic about the upcoming Soccer World Cup?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I covered the World Cup in Germany and the World Cup in Brazil 4 years ago, and I think it's a great chance to see and learn more about the country. I think the world got to see what real Germany is like in 2006 with the World Cup here. There was a lot of outdated views of Germany, and the world got to see what a friendly, smiling country this is, helpful people, good weather, and it was a great tournament, and hopefully it'll be a great tournament in Russia as well, and the world will get to learn more about Russia away from Putin and away from politics.
Excuse me, it's exactly the point. The World Cup in Germany 12 years ago,
yeah.
It was not about miracle. And the World Cup in Russia 2018 is not only about Putin, but sometimes I have an expression...
Are you saying the Germans are hypocrites?
I'm saying that the German public opinion is kind of obsessed by Putin. And even if you talk soccer, even if you talk sports and soccer, all the way we are coming back to Putin.
He speaks German. He was a KGB agent here. There's an obvious fascination in Germany.
Probably, yeah.
Daria, what do you say?
What I'm saying is Russia is much more than only one person. Russia is so much more than only Putin.
Yeah, I would really like to support that. I mean, as a Russian journalist, often reporting about Russia for the English language.
So you agree with Vladimir?
Yeah,
Russia is not just Putin.
Definitely, yeah. It's
but I mean, you're somebody who has reported on human rights concerns. There are massive human rights concerns about Russia. There have been. Is this just a sort of a fiction of the West, or is this the West?
Definitely.
Is it hypocrisy once again on the part of the West to focus on gay rights, on racism, on human rights in general?
I definitely do not think it is hypocritical of the Western media to focus on it, the Western public to look at it, because it is happening on this huge scale. I mean, remember only this year there was this huge scandal with the gay people being murdered in Chechnya. So dozens of gay men in Chechnya, which is the region in the south of Russia and the Caucasus, were tortured. Some of them managed to escape, some were killed. Some of them were killed by their own families, who were forced to kill them to clean their honor. I have only today actually checked a report by a social scientist in Russia who counted that since 2010 there has been over 200 murders of gay people around Russia.
Yeah.
Over 200.
Don't get me wrong, Russia is not perfect. And we have a huge set of domestic problems. Gay rights, human rights, criminality, you name it. But it's every country in the world who is applying to be hosting the World Cup, Brasilia, South Africa, whatever. It's always something. You can talk about criminality in Brasilia, you can talk about HIV in South Africa. There's always something to talk.
Fact remains, though, that Vitaly Mutko has now been banned by the International Olympic Committee for his role in the systematic doping that has led to the ban. He nevertheless remains, correct me if it's not true, the man effectively in charge of the World Cup, the upcoming World Cup, and he's Deputy Russia Prime Minister. Yes. This is not this is serious.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's a disaster. It's a disaster for Russian public. It's a disaster for Russian government. It's a disaster for everyone. Because on a such high level, if an international organization like IOS saying Vitaly Mutko, you are banned, it's a disaster. No doubt.
It's definitely a massive stain on the Russian World Cup. I mean, who knows? Maybe he won't be there by the time the tournament starts. But it is absolutely a big problem, and we'll see what happens if he's still there.
Daria, do you expect political protest, like, you know, the way that we saw Dilma Rousseff in Russia last time, in Brazil last time round, booed by Brazilian soccer fans? Do you expect that kind of thing to happen in Vladimir Putin's Russia during the World Cup?
It is a very interesting question because, as we all know, the same year is the presidential election. So there has already been at least 2 big protests, several actually, in Russia this year. And there will probably be next year as well. But the Russian state, I am not really an expert in Brazil, so I do not know how vigorous is our police compared to Brazilian. But it was brutal in Moscow. I remember in June there were, I think, around 1,000 people arrested during one day. It is a record. There has never been something like that. So this intimidation tactic may have worked out, and there might be no protests at all. I can hardly imagine Russian public booing Vladimir Putin on the stadium.
Okay.
I was booing Vitaly Mutko ages ago in St. Petersburg, in St. Petersburg,
yeah,
the game
might
of
be the
Zenit.
scapegoat.
Campaigning journalist.
For the wrong decision of the trainer of Zenit. So it was enormously booing.
Okay, we're drawing to a close. I'd like to ask the two Russians again about their views on Vladimir Putin says he welcomes the world coming to Russia. They're going to see Russia for themselves. What are they going to take away from them, with them, in a sentence?
I hope they take away something good, and that they see the friendlier, more open part of Russia, and that they see all the young people in it. And yeah.
One sentence.
Russia is so much more than just Putin.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Russia is so much more than just Putin.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us on Quadriga this time. We look forward to seeing you again next time round. Bye-bye and cheers.